Hi, folks. Welcome back. Here we are with Philosophy 110. I am your instructor, Victor Fabian Abundez Guerra, and today we're going to be talking about the problem of evil proper and getting into a pretty big theological discussion regarding it. This is the Hick piece. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So in the last two readings, right, the attributes of God, as well as hell and universalism, we've been kind of throwing these arguments against sort of the Abrahamic God. Hick is going to sort of be here to sort of defend God in what we call a theodicy or a redemption of God. It sounds kind of weird that God would need defending, but maybe it's the idea of God that needs defending, according to Hick. But with that said, let's go ahead and begin. So we'll talk about the problem of evil with Sally Hashlanger. That's going to be a video. We're going to look at some solutions. Some solutions are going to be to deny perfection or deny logical comprehension. And of course, we're going to eventually get to Hick's solution. And he's going to have a multi-step answer to the problem of evil, which we'll talk about once we get there. So here is the problem of evil. Go ahead and pause my recorded lecture and listen to Sally Hashlanger's video on it. Go ahead and do that now. So again, the problem of evil is based on the Omni God. Hopefully you watched that video by Sally Hashlanger, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good. But if God is all these three things, it seems impossible that evil will exist, that suffering would exist. So why does it exist? According to Sally Hashlanger, we have a few options. Let's go ahead and look at a few here in this recorded lecture as well. So one option is to deny perfection. So if we might, for instance, deny omnibenevolence. So Elie Wiesel, author of Night and survivor of Auschwitz, went through some very traumatic times during World War II, during the Holocaust, but they survived. But their view of the atrocities and war crimes during the Holocaust made them believe that God, although they exist, are not truly all loving and all good. So give me 1 second. I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Let me mute myself. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Again, I'm still a little sick. But Elie Wiesel says to go ahead and deny omnibenevolence, right? So how does he do this? Well, he says, look, and this is part of the book, content warning for the Holocaust, right? But he has this passage in the book. Then came the march past the victims. These were victims that were punished. The two men were no longer alive. Their tongues were hanging out, swollen and bluish, but the third rope was still moving. The child, too light, was still breathing. They were being hung, but because the child was too light, not heavy enough, they didn't themselves have enough weight to sort of choke themselves because the child was too light. And so he remained for more than half an hour, lingering between life and death, writhing before our eyes. The Nazis made them see this. And we were forced to look at him at close range. He was still alive when I passed him. His tongue was still red, his eyes not yet extinguished. A child in excruciating pain for over 30 minutes. Behind me, Elie Wiesel said, I heard the same man asking, for God's sake, where is God? And from within me, I heard a voice answer, where is he? This is where. God's right here, hanging here from this gallows. In other words, yeah, God's very powerful. Maybe God knows everything because he's here. But God doesn't care, or maybe God is sadistic and allows this to happen. That night, the soup tasted of corpses, according to Mr. Wiesel. So that's one solution, right? And that's the solution that some people have sort of gone through, especially Elie Wiesel, because he went through so much sort of evil trauma and saw that the evil that exists in the world. Here's another potential solution, right? So God is omnibenevolent, omni-good, all-powerful, and all-knowing. So why does evil exist? According to Pierre Bayle, the philosopher of Rotterdam, they say that there is no logical way to understand it. There's kind of the fancier way, or the more theological way of saying that God works in mysterious ways. So what does Pierre Bayle say exactly? His solution is just to deny rational comprehension. In his historical and critical dictionary, he had an article titled Manichaeans. This relates to Manichaeism, a religion that teaches of a cosmic battle between good and evil. He says the way of reconciling the moral and physical evil of humanity with all the attributes of the single, infinitely perfect principle of all things. So, how do we reconcile the evil that exists in humans to the evil that humans do to each other? How do we reconcile that with a perfectly good God? Well, it surpasses our philosophical understanding. It surpasses our philosophical lights, such that the Manichaean objections leave us with the difficulties that human reason cannot resolve. Nevertheless, so it's just beyond human reason. Nevertheless, he does say, it is still necessary, even though it's beyond your human capacity to understand how God works and allows evil to exist, even though they're all good. You still gotta believe what the natural light and revelation teach us about the unity and infinite perfection of God. So we still have to hold on to faith, even though it's not logical, even though it's not rational, even though it's not reasonable, according to Pierre Bayle. So here's really where we sort of get to the most interesting defense of the problem of evil. Or here's where we get to the most interesting defense of the problem of evil, called the free will defense. And we're going to be looking at John Hayward Hicks, Harwood Hicks' particular defense of it. So he's an evangelical Christian, so he's very religious. He's a Quaker, or he was Quaker by the end of his life. And he is not interested, he's not going to make a complete defense, right? He's not going to make a complete defense of suffering and the problem of evil. Because again, the problem of evil, it might be like a tree falls on the forest and kills a deer and they're in excruciating pain. There's no humans involved there. But what he is going to do, he's going to go ahead and defend the evil that exists that comes out of humans. So he's going to go ahead and explain why humans in particular sin, and he's going to go ahead and explain the evil that comes and originates from people. But not all evil, keep that in mind. So he says, look, to begin with, a lot of evil, a lot of bad things come from just people. He says cruelty, greed, lovelessness, ruthless ambition, narrow suspiciousness, with their immense production of human misery, are all expressions of the practical atheism that St. Augustine diagnosed at the heart that as the heart curved in upon itself. These are all man-made ills. So practical atheism means that you act in these cruel and selfish ways, and you are therefore a practical atheist, an atheist in your actions, according to St. Augustine and according to Hick. But these are all things that come from humans. So there's a lot of evil that comes from sin. There's a lot of evil that comes from humans. Again, not all evil comes from humans, but a lot of it does, according to Hick. So what is sin? Sin, then, and he defines this very specifically, and we're going to go ahead and look at this in more detail later, is a disorientation at the very center of man's being, where he stands in relationship with the source and Lord of his life and the determiner of his destiny. So, in other words, he thinks of sin in terms of a relationship. If you are in sin, your relationship with God is messed up. It's an improper relationship. While if you lack sin, you're in a proper relationship with God. Of course, John Hick is very Christian, right? So he does believe that Christ was the only person, Jesus Christ was only the person to have ever been in a perfect relationship with God. But again, it's important for us to understand, for him, sin, not in terms of actions, bad things that you do here on the earth, but sin in terms of your relationship with God. That's what it means to be in sin, to be in an improper relationship with God. But with that said, folks, let's go ahead and pause here for today, and we're going to go ahead and finish these slides next time. Bye, folks. I'll see you then.